What's up, man?
Hello, Anthony.
Oh, my goodness. Mike Pick over there on the multicam setup, and we just had a pretty awesome morning, at least to start our morning. We shot some pistols, shot some rifle, and we shot a big old Barrett 50 cal out on the range. And what'd you think of that?
That was insane. It was awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was a $30 investment for us to shoot 3 rounds. So here we are. We're back in the Tradecraft Range Studios with the Pewjitsu podcast. Mike Pick to my right and Mike Fonseca directly in front of me. And I kind of left like a cryptic note about Mike coming in on last episode. And I already asked Mike if this was okay, and he said, perfect. So Mike is a real world Jerry Maguire in that he is a sports agent. He represents professional athletes in both their on-field and off-field endeavors. So he has represented in his company. He's the vice president of Excel Sports. He spent some time over a decade at CAA and also over at IMG. So heavy hitters in the world of sports management. And he has handled George St. Pierre, Cain Velasquez. He's currently with one of my favorites, Tim Kennedy from Sheepdog Response, who has been here on the property. We actually had a very funny little FaceTime with Tim this morning. He just got out of bed. So, Mike, who else are you working with right now?
Well, as an agency, it's a pretty large agency. We represent, some pretty big names. On the golf side of things, it's Tiger Woods, and it's Justin Rose and Justin Thomas, and Gary Woodland, Colin Morikawa, who's one of the fastest rising stars on the PGA Tour. And on the football side of things, we've worked with Peyton and Eli for many years, and Joe Montana. We've got Justin Herbert, who was just the Rookie of the Year, and we were representing Trevor Lawrence, who's expected to be the first overall pick here coming up. So very excited. On the baseball side, Freddie Freeman, who just won the NL MVP last year, and I think is expected to do some great things again this year. But we've got some great players in baseball, golf, basketball, football, and then some other folks that we call talent marketing, folks that are not in the traditional sports that we represent.
He's just the biggest name dropper in the world, which is exactly why we asked him to come in here. He's like, hey, drop some names on us, man. Yeah, that's, an amazing lineup from a whole bunch of different sports. And I know that you guys branch out beyond those 3 main sports into MMA, basketball, I'm sure, and some of the other big league sports. For the layperson who maybe they saw Jerry Maguire and all their mindset when they hear sports agent is just the show me the money theme. How real is some of that?
It's pretty real.
Did they do a good job making that movie?
Yeah, I think they did a good job of the movie. That movie came out when I was in high school, and I had decided I wanted to be in the sports business about 2 years before that. So the problem with that movie was that everyone decided at that point that they wanted to be in the business as well, which created a real problem for me.
Mud the market with new agents.
But no, it's a very humbling job. It's a very exciting job. But at the end of the day, it's a business, right? It's every day we're trying to find opportunities for our clients, and we're trying to be creative, and we're trying to be innovative. And so it's not all sexy. It's not all flash. In fact, the vast majority of it is grinding and putting your head down, and you're in an office and you're trying to create opportunities. So
can you take us through, how does somebody decide? You said there was a decision at some point in your high school career or in your formative years that you wanted to work in sports or in managing athletes. How do you go about doing that?
Well, I think for me, it was before the industry was really that mature. And so I decided early on that I was playing baseball in San Diego, which was one of the top amateur markets in the country. So a lot of my friends were going through the process of getting drafted, playing professionally. A lot of guys before spring training would come out and work out with us because our coaches were some of the best coaches in San Diego. So I was being exposed to that, and I recognized, hey, I like baseball. I like business. I like the idea of helping out friends of mine that I knew that I said, listen, I think they'd be better served if they had an advocate that really cared about them. And so I decided this is what I wanted to do. And so I, formed some relationship with some mentors and got exposed to the business and started getting some real world experience all through high school, all through college. And when I came out of college, I had an opportunity to intern at IMG, which was at the time, the biggest and the best and the original, right? Mark McCormick was the first agent of any kind in sports back in the 1960s. So it was kind of a dream opportunity for me. And a guy named Steve Zen, who became my boss and a mentor and a dear friend of mine, he's the one that gave me the first opportunity. I was applying or interviewing for an internship the morning of my college graduation. And he said, listen, I like you. I think you'd be great for us. The only problem is you need college credit in order to be an intern here at IMG. So unfortunately, I don't have anything. I said, well, it's Saturday morning of my graduation. I said, can you give me until Monday? He goes, for what? I'm like, let me just see if I can come up with a solution for this little problem that we have. And he's like, okay. So by Monday, I had enrolled in a post-baccalaureate program at Cal State Hayward in the Bay Area. And I called Steve. I said, okay, Steve, I'm all lined up. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm registered and I start class on Monday. So when do I start with you? He's like, all right, I guess you're starting on Tuesday.
Nice. So you probably proved your worth almost immediately being a problem solver. Okay, we have a problem. I have a solution. Here's what it's going to be. And in that story, I think I hear and others are going to hear, you didn't just get brought into the upper echelon of sports management because you knew some people. You worked hard to find an opening. You put your foot in that door forcefully, and you became a grinder to get that first gig landed. Who was your first contract?
Well, it was funny because when I came, my first role at IMG was I was an intern, an unpaid intern in the consulting group, right? So that job was really looking at, on behalf of the brand side of things, looking at what they should be doing in sports. We're helping advise them on what's the strategy, what are the tactics behind that, what events they should be sponsoring, what athletes they should be signing. And so it was a really unique perspective for me to really understand the value of, what opportunities existed from a sponsorship standpoint on behalf of a brand, right? So Wells Fargo was an initial client of ours. And my job, because I was the baseball guy, was to help them evaluate their sponsorships in baseball. And so I was evaluating their Giants sponsorship in San Francisco. I was evaluating the opportunity to sponsor Petco Park in San Diego. And so that was the first look at things, right? From that perspective. What is the value of a sign? What is the value of, this asset they're bringing out? What is the sponsorship, the TV side of things? And coming back to the Wells Fargo executive and say, hey, this $1 million package you're being pitched is actually only worth $600,000. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, based on what you guys are trying to achieve, we should be asking for X, Y, and Z instead of what they're offering us. So that was a really unique opportunity because it gave me a different perspective. Now, my day job at IMG at the time was helping to run events. So I was the grunt. I was distributing ice at a golf tournament. I was, printing out sheets at a tennis tournament. I was the assistant box office manager for a WTA event, which was a, kind of a big deal event that all the top players, women players in the world, played every year. But it was a whole different. I was literally printing out tickets and trying to sell group tickets and trying to sell season tickets to a 1-week WTA event at Stanford. Mm-hmm. And so that was another perspective, a different look on the business. And then I started working with some of our local talent. So Rich Gannon was the Raiders quarterback at the time. He was represented out of our Kansas City office, but they didn't have anyone on the ground that could actually look at endorsement opportunities for him. So I became kind of the on-the-ground guy for those opportunities. And then we had a chance to sign Alex Smith, who was the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft in 2005, and he came to our backyard, and I've had known Alex for a long, long time. So I started working on his business. And so I got a little more exposure to the talent side, to the brand side, to the sponsorship side of things. And shortly thereafter, a guy named Brody Van Wagenen, who was at IMG in the New York office with Casey, he moved to San Francisco. We became really good friends. And he said, hey, listen, we're really going to ramp up here shortly, and we're going to need someone that has your background and your grind and, you're a baseball guy to help us on the endorsement side of things. We need someone to really be proactive, finding opportunities off the field. We want you to come work for the baseball group. I said, all right, no problem. So all of a sudden I found myself in New York City working at IMG Baseball with Brody and Casey. And then about 3 months later, we left IMG to start CAA Sports in April of 2006. which is a whole crazy experience.
Yeah. So you split off and you started your own gig. You just said in a couple of sentences back, working with an athlete in their business. So is that how an agent and of course an athlete, is that how they look at themselves? They are a business. They're not. Yeah, they're a human being, of course, but their branding, their marketing of themselves, they treat themselves as a business.
Yeah, and that's certainly changed a lot over the years. I mean, I think the buzzword's always been there, but I think there's very few athletes, even today, still that are truly 360 businesses and brands, right? Obviously, Tiger is a great example early on of, what that is and what that could look like. But, that's the part to me is really, really fun as an agent, as a marketer, as an executive, to look at opportunities where you can help exploit all opportunities that exist for certain people.
I think, from the music side of things, Jay-Z said, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man." And that's there's a difference in that. And so I understand exactly what you're saying. So you went to, how long was like the grind? How long were you at the bottom level, handing out ice packs, and printing tickets? How long did that last?
It's still a grind, brother. It's still a grind. Right? There's some days where you're just like, wow, we're still doing this, right? But that's every day, right? It's about the client and whatever the client needs or desires or the opportunity exists. And every day there's some things that you're doing that you didn't think you'd still be doing 25 years later.
Right.
And but that's part of the fun of it, right? Even the idea of cold calling a company that I was doing when I was 21 years old, I still do, right?
Yeah.
And the idea that, I'll give you an example. Subway sandwiches this is probably back in 2008. Ryan Howard had just become a client. And I had read in an article that Ryan Howard used to hang out at Subway sandwiches because his buddy from high school, I think his dad was a franchisee. And I don't think I had met Ryan at that time. He'd been a client for like a week. And I was like, I'm going to call Subway sandwiches because I can tell the story about, hey, there's the authentic connection between Ryan and Subway sandwiches. And by the way, he's going to be one of the faces of baseball. He's a home run hitter, and there's got to be an opportunity. And he had done nothing off the field. And so I cold called Subway. And I got a call back from their agency 2 days later, like, you know what, let's have a conversation. And ironically, at the time, they were just rolling out a Philly cheesesteak sandwich concept, right? They were going to roll it out in the tri-state area and see how it did and then roll it out. And this guy, Larry Rothstein, said, hey, like, this doesn't make a lot of sense for us to sign a Philadelphia Philly to a national endorsement deal. But it is a Philly cheesesteak sandwich, and it's supposed to be about meaty and being hearty and being, everything that represents that Ryan represented. And I said, and we know that he's on the rise, so let's have a go here. And so we did his first endorsement deal within 2 weeks, but that was off a cold call. And for the next 8 years, Ryan was in a national Subway commercial that paid him multiple millions of dollars,
right?
Because somebody had cold called this brand and pitched them this idea, and that to me is what
because they knew the backstory of Ryan's buddy, their family owning.
So that's the part that's fun to me to this day, is creating something that didn't exist before, reaching out to someone with an idea, pitching them an idea, right, and having full buy-in from the client, the talent, or whoever, and saying, hey, let's go do this. And when you have clients that are truly leaning in and saying, let's go see what happens, right?
Yeah,
and I'll say, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. I just know we've got a good idea. Let's try to pitch it. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it's okay. But we're trying to be innovative. We're trying to find solutions for the brands that leverage the value and the power of the talent. And that's where you make magic.
You've been in the business, a long time now. We're the same. We're about the same age, right? So, I didn't cover one thing, and I need to be very transparent here, and that Mike is my cousin through marriage. So my wife Allison and Mike here are cousins, and so I got to marry into this relationship. And so you've been in the business a long time, and you've been in it long enough, and there's enough change in the industry just due to technology and the speed at which this thing moves, that you've seen it in multiple kind of iterations where athletes didn't have anything going on off field. They were just their on field persona. They got paid to play or whatever it is that what they're doing, and now they're reaching out into software or I'm sorry, soft drink industry, of course, apparel, Subway endorsements. How has that been for you to see those changes? And have you had to like really ramp up your knowledge of what's available in terms of off-field stuff? I know you had to do a cold call to land the Subway thing, but like how does an agent today keeping up with the opportunities that are out there?
Yeah, and I think that there's, I don't necessarily think a lot of those things are new. I think that the number of opportunities that exist are much greater than they used to be. There's a lot more brands. There's a lot more sort of opportunity for talent and influencers to be a part of brands. That's obviously something that's technology driven. I think that there's, if you think about, 30, 40 years ago, Arnold Palmer and the deals he was doing in the 1970s, right? They were very, very traditional deals. It was, a commercial shoot, it was production, it was an appearance, and those still exist as sort of the core, right? But now there's a whole lot more about digital and social and the content creation, and that really wasn't necessarily on the talent early on. And I think that if you think about all the opportunities that now exist across all the industries, right? All the sports, all the talent. I mean, there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of brands, but there's a limited universe there, right? So I think our biggest challenge now is how do you differentiate? Because back in the day it was, you've got a few world-class athletes and that's kind of the opportunity. Now you have a lot of legit athletes, a lot of expectations, a lot of markets, a lot of brands. And so I think the challenge now is just separating yourself from other talent, because it's not just
and
about
a lot of vehicles to take those athletes and their talents out into the world, whether it be social media or what have you. Are you a historian of the of being an agent? Because you mentioned Arnold Palmer's early forays into branding himself or getting this off course promotional stuff in the 70s. Are you do you know the history of this?
I love
really
history. Well? I wouldn't say I'm an expert in the history of agents and agencies, but I know probably enough to be dangerous. Yeah. And I think that the fun part about my career is, you see IMG, then we go to CA, who was, the largest Hollywood talent agency. You create a sports group within that group, and then, the world of Excel, and all the guys at Excel, the partners, all came from IMG, right? So they were all learned and they were all taught by Mark McCormick. And so I like the business of sports. I've always liked the business of sports, the history of sports. Marvin Miller was definitely the first sort of labor lawyer to be working on behalf of athletes in the union capacity. And I think he was a coal union guy, if I remember correctly, or steel union guy in the 60s. And he basically organized the baseball union, the baseball players in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And that was really fun to learn about as a student coming up. And I had an opportunity when he passed away to attend his funeral, which was really cool because it was a pretty small group of folks within the baseball union. And at the time, obviously, we were part of the union through the players that we represent. So it's always fun to see those types of things. And Mark McCormick, I never got to meet him, but I was involved with a couple of opportunities with him. And I enjoy that, and I appreciate that. And I certainly recognize the opportunity that I've had in my career to see some of those things and some of those things develop as well. And I think what we're seeing now is going to be cool over the next 15, 20 years.
As your career, continues on, we've been headlong into COVID and lockdowns, and there was a cessation of sports there for a while. How did you manage, to get through that with these clients who obviously have, they have big bank accounts, they have a lot of money coming in, but they have a lot of money going out, and it needs to be evergreen and replenished often. And so, how did you personally as an agent handle these downtimes?
It was tricky, especially early on as an agency. Right away, we were thinking about how are we going to supplement? How are we going to create new opportunities out of this challenge? And I think everyone was dealing with the same thing, but I think we really, really focus as an agency on tangible things, opportunities that were going to exist to come out of COVID. And, the bulk of our business is obviously the on-field representation of these clients, and that was the part that was at greatest risk as far as salaries, right? Because if the players aren't playing, they're not getting paid. If they're not getting paid, we're not getting paid. So we needed to start thinking about what are we going to create out of this? And one of the things that I think was exciting to think about is sort of the Zoom era that came out, right? When we had, most of us really hadn't much exposures to Zoom. Certainly a lot of players hadn't. And it created this opportunity. And we were pivoting, especially in our speakers group, and a lot of the appearances were pivoting to online Zoom calls and videos. And you start looking at what does that look like? And one of the businesses that kind of launched out of that was the opportunity to say, all right, we've got clients that are wanting to be doing things, wanting to stay busy, still want to connect with their fans. And now we have greater access to them than we ever did because Zoom is now so easy. And so I was approached by a friend of mine who was the former president of CNN, John Klein, about an opportunity to launch a business that was really live, watching live sports with your favorite players, current and former. And you think that very basic concept, right? Okay, watching live sports on TV and on your second screen, on your computer screen, on your phone, you're engaging that same experience with an Eli Manning, a Johnny Damon, a whoever it's going to be, right? You're watching a Yankee game with Johnny Damon. That's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah.
And you're watching that. There's 30 people in the sort of VIP room where you get to actually engage with Johnny or an Eli Manning or whoever it's going to be. And then you have the second tier of tickets, which is you can watch it, you can experience it, but you don't actually get to engage, right? So you just watching it is cool enough, right? Hearing the stories from these athletes, engaging with fans, it's kind of a genius concept.
It takes
right?
the fly on the wall concept and makes it very much a real thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we launched that business. We launched that business at Super Bowl, and it's going to be really interesting.
Incredible.
Because I think if you think about what Cameo is all about, Cameo is a $1 billion business now, right? And that's one-way videos from celebrities wishing you birthday, et cetera, et cetera. This is now live sports in real time, and the scalability of that, because you're talking about there's 162 baseball games, right? Football games, soccer games, cricket, everything that exists. And every single one of those sports and every single one of those teams has a subset of players that are very relevant to that fan base.
Yep.
Right? And at the college level, think about all the college players that were relevant when you went to school there or were the greatest quarterbacks that necessarily weren't
coaches.
Super Bowls, right? Aren't superstars or didn't go to Super Bowls. But so you have a tremendous amount of talent that is relevant. You've got technology that's created an opportunity. And you've got brands. You've got brands that are saying, hey, how do I connect with this community of fans in a different way? And so we're really, really excited about it. And that directly came out of COVID.
Yeah, what a great experience for the sports fan who, I'm sure many times people have said, I wish I could watch a ball game with, or I wish I could, rub elbows with so-and-so while watching, this game. What an amazing experience brought upon us, by an unfortunate, scenario.
Right.
That,
and one of the things that's really important about that concept in and of itself, from the talent perspective, as we're looking at it from the talent perspective, is that experience needs to be fun for the athlete. If it's not fun for the athlete and it's another lame corporate gig, that's not going to go anywhere. So what we said was, let's make the athlete, or let's have the athlete be able to invite a friend of theirs. It could be a buddy, best friend, it could be a cousin, it could be whoever, right? To join them for that experience. Because now you're really hanging out. The name of the company is called Hang.
Sure.
So you're hanging out. And so, the athlete and their best friend, and it could be a college teammate, whoever it's going to be, creates this idea that you're just hanging out. You're one of the guys.
Yeah.
He's no longer the greatest quarterback in Giants history. He's just a fan with you watching a Giants game.
Yeah,
from all different
putting that person that's familiar to the athlete in the room instantly brings that athlete down to a more human level, because they're going to be smoking and joking, and that guy's going to have some shit that they can throw back on that athlete, to loosen them up. Totally. And it instantly loosens them up, makes them feel like one of the guys. That's brilliant, for sure. Amazing. Mike, who would you, if you got to take in a sport, who'd you want to watch it with?
To take in a sport?
Yeah, if you're going to watch a baseball game, a football game, a basketball game, an MMA match, who would be the guy you'd like pick to be next to you to watch it with?
I think I'd take you.
Oh.
Both of you guys. I don't know.
Thanks, man. Because I'd buy the beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, great concept. So that's currently happening.
Just launched it.
What's the price point on that?
The tiers right now are it's $150 to be in the VIP room for a quarter for a football game, and then the GA tickets are $5 or $10. So there's no limit on the GA tickets.
Yeah,
right?
Very reasonable. That's not unreasonable.
Right. You think about what
for the
Cameo
experience.
costs. You can pay between $50 and probably $1,000 for a Cameo video. This is an experience. This is live sports, and so we're just now scaling up. We just closed a round of fundraising for the business, and we're just about to scale up. So there's the corporate side of things. There's also the ability for a company to say, I want to host and entertain a bunch of my key customers. I've got a customer in New York who's a Giants fan. Okay, we're going to do a Giants game. I've got a customer in France who loves F1. We're going to do an F1 thing. And so you take these big corporations that have high-level sales executives that are entertaining, and rather than traveling and buying a suite at a game, you can now do that in real time and literally tailor it to whatever your buyer actually cares about.
What a great gift too. Get my dad, a seat next to a virtual seat next to so and so, or your son. What a great gift! It has a bunch of different ways that could be pulled off. That's amazing.
We had Marcus Allen one of the quarters during Super Bowl. Marcus Allen was on. We had a bunch of Kansas City and Raiders fans on for the quarter, and there was a woman who was a Kansas City Chiefs fan. Yeah. Who was so excited. She never thought she'd ever chance to hang out with Marcus Allen, watching the Super Bowl with him. And Marcus was awesome, and he was so engaging, and he ended up singing happy birthday. It was her birthday.
Awesome.
And she literally was crying.
He does have a pretty amazing on-screen persona.
He's awesome.
He's been, really great over the years. I think if I had an opportunity to watch a baseball game, but my choice passed away actually a few years ago. It was one of my favorite baseball players growing up. And San Diego, one of San Diego's finest, Tony Gwynn.
Sir.
I would have definitely chosen him for a number of reasons, but just amazing ambassador to the sport. Everybody considered him a nice guy in all respects. So, yeah, that would have been my choice. I
used to go to Padres games growing up, and you didn't really appreciate it at the time because I didn't really have much context of the world, but watching him day in and day out. I mean, I think he's the greatest hitter of all time.
Incredible. And
you watch him every single day, and just the way he went about it and how easy he made it look. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, he was a career 338 or something stupid like that.
Soft-spoken.
Just awesome guy. And he was a freak of an athlete.
He played basketball.
He played basketball at San Diego State. My father-in-law, who was supposed to be here with us today, who was the assistant GM for the Clippers back in the day, drafted him to the Clippers. But people forget Tony Gwynn was a beast of a point guard at San Jose State. He's a great athlete, but obviously just phenomenal hitter.
It was around 93 or 94. I was in LA getting ready to go play some baseball over in China, and I went to go see a San Diego a Padres-Dodgers game, and we were there early for BP. And Tony Gwynn steps up. He's taking BP, and he starts hitting ground balls to first base, second base, straight up the middle. And he's spraying these little ground balls, and then he starts spraying these little dying line drives from over first, over second, over the shortstop, out into left, and then he starts hitting like smoked line drives over all the same position, and then he starts driving the ball out of the park to all these positions, and he's like, okay, I'm good. It's just unbelievable that he had that kind of control. Yeah, but he did it. He did it beautifully and effortlessly with a little pudge on him at that time too.
Yeah. And he would never strike out. Never ever see Tony strike out.
No, if you just for shits and giggles, if you ever like hop on and look at Tony Gwynn career stats, it's crazy how few strikeouts he had. Just amazing. One of my favorites. So we've talked about your career in the past, but I think it's a really fascinating thing for people that don't know any sports agents. They're not around them. They're aware of your work because they know that that your clients ultimately make many zeros behind in their salaries. But what's a day in the life, like a garden variety day in the life for a sports agent of your caliber in your position, what's it look like from start to finish?
I'm a little different
You
than
can
most
leave out
because-
some of the gory details.
Yeah, I'm a little different because I work across so many different areas, and I focus primarily off the field and off the court, right? So on a given day, I may be working on a golf opportunity, or I may be working on something with a guy like Tim or Kane, working on our baseball business, and so it really depends, right? But I think ultimately I've gotten much better at being very scheduled and very programmed as far as what's on the schedule, what we'd like to accomplish. How do you create time for yourself to be able to be proactive in reaching out and building new business? Because it's not just maintaining your existing clients and the relationships and the deal flow that's happening, but it's finding new opportunities. And if you don't carve out that time every single day to be proactive, then you're not moving anything forward, right? So that's I think the biggest challenge for me every day is to carve out that time to say, okay, I'm going to impact this client's business, or I'm going to impact our business on these certain things that I need to proactively force myself to find, because otherwise it's very easy for your day to get completely engulfed by just reactions, just looking at emails, looking at text messages, and reacting to what you have to do.
How many clients are you currently stabling?
Well, as an agency, I think we have maybe it's 300 clients across all sports, and I focus on a handful of those. I don't know, whatever the actual number is.
So it's manageable. It's not like you've got 100 on you that you're just constantly running around herding cats and
no. And again,
fires.
we've got 100 employees, right? So we've got it's from a ratio perspective. We're a really good place to manage the needs of our clients. And again, every client has multiple people working on their business, right? I'm only working on one piece of the business on respective clients.
And your contact with them is immediate. They've got your phone number. They need you. They call you, and that's an immediate action drill for you in some cases.
Yep. Every client has the respective sort of lead agent or point person or whoever they need to get certain business done. Yeah. And it's a lifestyle. It's not a job.
Yeah, definitely a lifestyle, and the lifestyle of a professional agent and the lifestyle of a husband and father sometimes probably will butt heads with each other. And you're a great dad and you're a great husband while doing great things for your clients. How do you balance these two worlds where Mike and I were kind of talking and throwing some ideas around the other day regarding your visit. How do you go from Wednesday night cooking dinner and putting the kids to bed and hanging out with Tara at home to Friday night, you're front row at a major event at the Garden around celebs and stuff like that. How do you balance it, and how does does it influence your home life?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that COVID has, I think, done a great job of is refocusing me and putting things back in perspective. Because it's very, very easy to get caught up in business and in what that looks like, in the rat race. And I'm in New York City every single day, so I'm commuting an hour and a half each way to New York City. And you have
from Connecticut,
right? So let's say you're in the office at 8:00 in the morning, and you're going, and then you'll have drinks, or you'll have dinners, you'll have meetings after work, and not to mention whenever you have to go to a game or you're traveling. And that's a lot. It's a lot on a family. It's a lot on a wife. It's a lot on kids. And you forget about it. But until COVID, I didn't really, really, really think about it or really consider what that looks like for the kids and for my wife. Oftentimes during the week, we kind of just joke, but we wouldn't really see each other. I'd see the kids in the morning before I left for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then you'd see them on the weekends, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as long as there wasn't an event you were going to, or especially UFC stuff that was all weekends.
Weekend long.
And COVID now has allowed me to work from home, see the kids for breakfast, take the kids to school, have lunch with my wife or at home, have dinner every single night with the family, right? And that's awesome. I never, ever thought in my entire career would I ever be able to coach my kid. I was an assistant basketball coach this year for Brooks's team, which was awesome. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was still awesome. But those are things that, I'm 42 years old, 42 or 43. I think I'm 42.
You're old if you can't fucking remember.
I never ever thought that I would have that moment in life where I could have dinner with my kids and really have that experience. And we'll think about it. And obviously when things get back to normal, it allows us to sort of have perspective. And now that you can work from home, I think that'll be a great balance. I think we're going to see it across not just our industry, but I think in general, when people can realize.
I think the world has this has been in a lot of minds. It's been in mine because many days I'm not normally here on Monday on property. I'm usually home. I work from home several days a week because the nature of my job is such that I can do that, and I don't have to commute 50 minutes or so here every day to do it and be effective. In fact, I'm much more effective when I stay at home. I don't have the same interruptions and people vying for my attention. I can get it done from home. But I also get to do that family stuff too. I get to drive my daughters to school on certain mornings. I'm home every morning when they wake up for the most part. So I can, we can thank COVID for that. And I know that spans a lot of industries. People are making the same amount of money, maybe even more for their companies from home. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal. That's
and
a
you
huge
think
deal.
about also, you think about Europe, right? I mean, Europe kind of has it right. They work, but they don't work like Americans work, right? And it's sometimes the balance is a little bit out of whack when you realize, a dear friend of mine, Lawrence Pollock, who passed away probably about 6 years ago now. We became really, really good buddies. He was a mentor of mine. He was a friend. He was a very, very savvy businessman. He was a beast. And he bought a couple companies, which is how we got to know each other. But he passed away suddenly. We were supposed to have dinner on a Wednesday in New York, and the weekend before, he was in South Africa with his father, and he had a heart attack, and he passed away. And it was kind of the first true sort of friend of mine in my inner circle that had ever passed away. And probably lucky for me that it hadn't happened earlier. But I remember going to his funeral, and I remember we had just talked maybe 2 weeks before about we had dinner, and he was talking about some really cool stories he had, and he always just blew me away with the stories that he had and how he's able to navigate these things and just excitement of some things that he'd been done in his career. And flight was late and I missed the funeral, but I said, you know what, I still want to go to the cemetery. And so I went by myself. The Uber driver dropped me off, and I just sat there, and it was just this pile of dirt. And I was just staring at the pile of dirt, and I was just thinking, like, God, if all the things that we talked about, and all the things that he did in his career, and all the money that he made for people, and all his adventures, it just comes down to the legacy, right? What impact did he have on people's life? And it didn't. No one cared at that point how much money he'd made. No one cared about how much money he made for anybody else. No one cared about any of the business deals that he had done. Nobody did. Yep. They just cared about the man. Was he a good guy? Was he someone that made an impact on your life? And what were we going to carry forward from that life? Yeah,
they're not mourning the loss of his income. Mm-hmm. They're mourning the man, and I do think often about a legacy component to what it is that I do, at least. Obviously, Mike, you may have your own thoughts, but I do think about it. I think about it often in terms of my children. Like, what are they going to think? What will they say when they look back? My dad wasn't around all that often, or my dad was a badass, man. He did all kinds of cool shit, and this is what he taught us. So I have a legacy component in the back of my brain all the time.
I think at 40, I think a pretty general number where people start thinking about life differently, start losing people, and I do my best to meditate every morning, and that's something that comes up often. I just ask myself what matters, and then depending on what kind of knots you get yourself into in life, you start losing your mind, you become unhappy or depressed, even sad, and then coming back to the roots of what matters, and it's never money, it's never the car, it's never the thing. So I think that's something that happens naturally at 40, and I think I'm 46 now, and it's a very prevalent and a very powerful driving force. I think in the first part of my life, I would just go, just go and create, and then at some point, what is happiness? What is joy? What makes me happy? It has to come up.
Yeah, and we're all in the relationship business here. You're a sports agent. You're a relationship broker, and you're not going to be successful without it. And Mike does the same in his current profession as a videographer, photographer. That they specialize primarily in weddings, high school graduations, and then commercial stuff. He has to have. This is about relationships, and same here.
I've got a question for you. Since there's so much money involved in it. How do you get across your authentic desire to be in the person that you work with, and have them in your best interest, since there is money involved, and how do you create that trust?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, I remember having this conversation with Tim Kennedy, who you mentioned earlier. And Tim was a very non-traditional client, either at the old agency or of client of mine. He just was. He didn't fit the mold of baseball or football or basketball. And there was something about him that I just loved. I loved what he stood for. I loved what he represented. I loved the way he went about his business. And I loved that he stood for all that was right about being an American, right? And I said, my grandpa was a patriot, and I consider myself a patriot. And I said, God, here's something new and interesting that I know that I'm passionate about. I know I could at least put my best effort in. And I told him, I said, Tim, I don't know what's going to happen here. I have no idea. I really don't know if I can make you $1. I don't know if we're going to have any success. But I can tell you I'm going to try my hardest, and I'm going to put us in a position to succeed. And if we don't succeed, it's not for lack of effort. And I think he sensed that I was genuine about it. He sensed that I was passionate about it. And I think to this day, he senses that I genuinely care about his business. I care about his livelihood. I care about his family. And yes, it's about money, right? But at the same time, a lot of the passion that comes across when I'm representing or talking about him or any of our clients, people sense that. People know when you actually care about it. It's you can BS, but at a certain point, that it's easy to see through BS. And I think that if you genuinely care about it and you're authentic about it, it's kind of solves itself.
For anybody that's not listening that doesn't know who Tim Kennedy is, Tim Kennedy was a U.S. Army Ranger and Green Beret, who, just that alone, if we were to stop the conversation there, you go, okay, this guy's legit. Because there are very few Green Berets in the world, and my hat's off to each and every one of them. But then he's like, I want to be a UFC fighter too. So, he trains, steps into arguably one of the most lethal sports that you've got on the planet, locks himself inside an octagon with another guy whose job is to render you unconscious or put you in so much pain that you submit. And he does really well. He's a fucking hell of a fighter. He'd been in some brawls, took his losses, takes his wins, and just like a champion should. And then aside from that, he runs a company called Sheepdog Response, which is a training organization that provides both civilians and law enforcement, military firearms training, hand-to-hand combat training, and mental strengthening. And they do it in a very dynamic, wonderful way. We've had them here on the property, and we are working to bring them back, I think, in November. So if you don't know who Tim Kennedy is, that's him, sort of like his overarching American, badass from the military, from his career in the Ultimate Fighting Championships. And is he going back into bare knuckle? He's put that out on his social.
It was funny.
I don't know if that was an April Fool's thing or not. But.
So he posted on April 1st about this, and I texted him. I was like, "What is this?
We haven't talked about this,
right?" Because normally something like that, he may want to run about me, so we have a conversation about it. And he's like, "Yep, it's real. Contract's on the way." And I was like, "What on earth? How on earth?
Straight up bare knuckle fight."
It was April Fool's joke.
So it was? Okay.
Exactly. The other thing too about Tim that people didn't, when you went from, people that didn't know Tim as a UFC fighter, then as a special forces guy, and then he was in a show called Hunting Hitler, which came about when I was at my old shop. They were looking to cast some people that had knowledge on the history of warfare. And they weren't thinking about him necessarily, but I was, because I knew what his capability was. And I said, hey, we're looking for anyone that has any knowledge about war history. And I was like, well, I got a guy. They're like, who? So I said, here's this guy. This is what he does. They're like, I'm not sure it makes sense. I said, just get us on the phone, get us on a video with the executive producer. I promise you, they're going to love him. And 3 years into it, right, it became their number one show in the world for History Channel. Amazing. Hunting Hitler, and Tim was obviously became the host of the third, he was the co-host, but by the third one, he was basically driving that show. And then he had his own show called Hard to Kill on Discovery.
Right. Yep, that's right.
Which was an awesome show. And so we've got a lot of projects, and he's got a book coming out later this year, and,
Very
and
cool.
we're launching a bunch of cool stuff. He's got a school he's launching, and so he's to me a great example of a true businessman and
Right.
a business and a brand. And there's brands that he endorses. There's companies he owns. There's platforms that we're releasing. There's a podcast that's going to be coming on a podcast network. So he's a lot of fun.
And you and I had a phone call a few months back with Tim and Ryan from Specular Theory about a training opportunity that that they're working on, trying to stand up for law enforcement. And it revolves around virtual reality, which is really surging right now. I just had an opportunity to play around with some virtual reality called Oculus, the system Oculus. It was quite amazing. And I could see from a training perspective with a program that's designed specifically for law enforcement or the military, you can work through problems that are otherwise impossible to recreate in real life or in real time. And that's something that Tim is working with from Specular Theory.
Really, really exciting. Probably one of the most exciting projects I've ever worked on. It's. I'm trying to think how to describe it in a way without sounding so dramatic. But it has an opportunity to really make some major cultural impacts in this country.
Yeah, for those who have not done, who are not involved in training. If you take this for example, you put on a virtual reality headset and you're presented with a gas station robbery, right? You're a cop. You get out of your car in this virtual reality world. You open the door. You walk into a robbery. There's a robber with a gun on the clerk. The clerk is pleading for his life. The robber is telling him, "Give me all the money or you're dead." Now, as the responding officer, you have a job to do, and that's is to fix this situation, whether that be through verbal tactics or whether that be through an application of lethal force. So there's an operator that's running the virtual reality system, just like Mike is running cameras over here today, and they're paying close attention to how the situation is unfolding. If I'm the responding officer and I come in very timid and I'm like, sir, please put the gun down. Mike, the operator, has the opportunity to turn the intensity up of the scenario in real time. And maybe the robber shoots the clerk, or maybe the clerk shoots the robber. But if I come in and maybe I give loud verbal commands and bring a firearm into the mix, the operator, Mike, could say, okay, we're going to tone this down. This guy did a good job with verbal judo, and it'll come to a peaceful conclusion. Those are very difficult scenarios to pull off in police academies or in-service training opportunities. They're very, very difficult. One is because you know everybody in the room. You're going to have lunch with them in a little while. You've known them for 15 years. It's hard to take them seriously when they're trying to play a bad guy. But when you have this virtual reality setup that is immersive, as they are these days, it can really pull you into the training and give you the best possible opportunity to learn something from the scenario presented. So that's kind of like what it is that we're talking about, and that's the realism that it brings. And because it's real, in the moment, the training that gets kicked out on the backside is significantly improved.
And the curriculum is what we're especially excited about, and who's developing the curriculum and what the curriculum is going to be about is what's especially interesting, right? Because it's something that I think we'll be able to talk about here in the next probably 3 weeks publicly.
Yeah,
but it's
because I'm aware of what it is, and I agree 100% that the value that's going to be involved in this curriculum for where we are in things right now is massive. Yep. Very cool.
And so, working with people that get an order of fame, finances, and fame, and is that something that's pretty quick? And I guess how do you guide your people in regards to like, hey, you need to diversify immediately and start investing your money and things like that, or do you leave that more up to them?
We don't work on the financial side of things. I mean, we're involved obviously, but all of them will have their own financial advisor and their money people that are sort of focused on investments and diversification, things like that.
Do you follow them, or do you stick with the primary sport that you initially connected with the talent?
What do you mean by that?
into anything else that if you're working with an individual and they start diversifying, getting into different types of businesses,
Oh, yeah.
do you follow them with
Yeah,
each
100%.
business and guide their?
Yeah, for sure. We're very involved in anything. I mean, there's lots of examples of clients of ours that, either want to get really involved with a certain business or they have a new idea. I mean, there was years ago, an old client, GSP, created this massage gun called Tim Tam, the Tim Tam massage gun. And it was kind of it predated Theragun and predated Hyper Ice, but it kind of created the category. And it was actually Faras's idea. George's coach brought it to me and said, hey, I got this kind of idea. I've got this jerry-rigged sort of thing. What do I do with it? And I took it to CES and I helped sell it in, and we had some investors and the business off and running. And so I was involved with that, and I was helping with some things. And again, there's a lot of examples of businesses that we either create joint ventures with, alliances, a lot of equity type deals we've done for clients. I had an old client that was very involved with Body Armor early on and got some equity in Body Armor, and that became a very, very successful partnership. So we're involved in every element of things.
Very cool.
It's crazy, the dynamics of like how many different businesses you need to know, I'm sure, as of now, and then what, God knows what in the next year, what you're going to have a mastery level in, right?
Cryptocurrency is something that's super hot right now. The NFTs are super hot, and we've got a whole team of folks deployed internally and externally to learn that, understand that. We got to be experts, right? Because we're putting our clients in the middle of this situation. We better know what we're talking about.
Yep.
And we better ask the smartest people in the world, and we better really, really, really be prepared. So that's something that's real time right now happening at the agency.
So we met out here this morning. First thing we did was we met at the range. We're here at Tradecraft Range. We met out at the range. We threw a gun belt on you, which you've never worn a gun belt before. So we threw. Good thing you and I are similarly sized because you fit one of my belts.
Not so much.
At least in the hips. So we threw a gun belt on Mike and loaded him up, and we went out onto the range. We did some shooting this morning. We worked just a simple 9mm. We worked just some basic fundamental stuff: grip, side alignment, trigger press. You were hitting the target immediately, and then we did some reload drills, and we moved into shooting a rifle at like 125 to 250 yards, and you were consistently making hits on target. And then we went to this. I don't know if that shows up.
Yeah, sure.
But we went.
If you can't see it, it's as big as me.
We went to this. we shot a 50 cal out there, which is a unique experience. Not everybody gets an opportunity to shoot a 50 caliber rifle. It's a hell of a caliber. We got some great video, I think, of all of it that we'll be pumping into the feed here. What'd you think? How was that for you?
It was awesome. It's funny because I've been working with Tim for probably 6 or 7 years now, and I've never shot with him because I always been very, very intimidated and scared that he was going to make fun of me. So I said, let me have Anthony quietly show me how to do this. But it was awesome. I felt very, very safe, very, very comfortable. I was a little nervous, to be honest with you, that I was going to look like an idiot. Yeah. But it was a lot of fun, and I really, really enjoyed it.
Well, we asked you to step outside of your comfort zone. That's not your world. Mm-hmm. It would be no different than if Mike and I were to join you for a day. In your office, we would feel pretty insignificant and clumsy, I'm sure. But like anything, just a lot of repetitions, do things right, and do them over and over again. It was a good time. We got some really cool video too.
Now I feel like now I'm going to be able to finally take possession of the new LS Edge, the 509 Edge that Tim just designed for FN.
Yeah.
That I was very involved with early on, and obviously involved with the negotiation of what that looked like and the whole process. And I've always been super excited about this. This gun came out. I saw it. It's beautiful. I saw it a couple weeks back in Austin with Tim. Now I feel like I can feel comfortable actually firing
awesome.
that bad boy.
You did so phenomenal. I guess first of all, you're like super fortunate to have a guy like Anthony run it through with you, and I know you know that, but there's like 50 things that he didn't have to correct you on that normally he would with somebody coming in and doing what you did. So kudos to you for how well you shot. Your attitude was amazing. You're definitely an empty cup willing to be filled up. But I just can't believe how great you did. Walking into that situation is really. And I don't know if you have anything to compare it to, right? You didn't have anybody else like in a classroom type setting where you can look and kind of gauge how good am I doing, right? But I'll be the one to tell you did fantastic out there.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
Yeah, that's a ton of fun. I enjoy first time shooters, just getting them out, getting them that first squeeze of the trigger, the exhilaration that's there, the clearing away of mystery around it is always fun. And they say, "Wow, hey, I can do this." We simplify it, and I think we talked in the last episode about like demystifying the act of shooting a gun, and it doesn't have to be a scary, terrible thing. So it's cool, and I hope that hope you pursue it, a little further. Get FN to send you one of those. Get FN to send us all a few of those, since we're talking about it. Awesome. So you're down in Florida. You're enjoying some sweet weather.
Yeah.
What's it like in Connecticut right now? I mean, because the Floridians' view of the rest of the world is like Florida, Georgia, and then there's New York, and we're not really sure what else is out there.
Right.
So what's a home like right now?
As far as
Weather-wise,
it's actually starting to turn. It's been a nice last couple of weeks. I think we're finally through the winter. I'm sure if I say that, we're going to have snow next week when I get back. But no, it's good, and I love Connecticut in the spring and the summertime and the fall. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. This is I think this is our last hurrah for some sweet weather here, and then it's going to turn into like Vietnam, super hot, super swampy.
It's a weird thing, working in this town where it's so transient, or not transient, but okay, I can't.
Yeah,
words
transient's a good
are
word.
hard.
Yep.
But like we have all the tourists and stuff come down, and so during the summer the roads are empty, but it's so hot and miserable, and there's really nothing to do. And then when the winter comes around, everybody comes in, and it clogs up the roads and stuff, and business picks up, and so you're just working the entire time, and you're not able to enjoy the beautiful weather. So at least the way I've been doing it as an entrepreneur. So tourism and weather and all that. Is there a tourist push from where you live?
Not really.
I mean, Connecticut's not a big place.
Yeah, not really. I think a lot of folks from Connecticut spend a lot of time in the wintertime in Vermont, a lot of Vermont time. And I guess a lot come up to Florida, but I don't think a lot of people come to Connecticut.
Vermont's
Although it is
nice.
a beautiful,
It's so beautiful,
state. There's
yeah.
great history. I mean, there's Revolutionary War history, like down the street from my house. Our town was completely burnt down, but one building in the Revolutionary War.
Cool. Wow.
So there's some pretty cool history there.
We spent our last family reunion in Vermont.
That's right.
Didn't we? Which was beautiful. Place
The
was
Mountaintop Inn.
beautiful. Yeah, it was
Resort,
awesome.
right? Yeah.
Gorgeous up there. I got a ticket on the way home. Super embarrassing.
For the record, we had 120 people come to the reunion, and that's just first cousins, first aunts and uncle. There's no extended family.
Yeah, I've been in the
core.
family for 19 years-ish. I can't remember everybody. I don't even think you remember everybody.
No chance.
Sometimes.
You're Anthony, right? You're Allison's husband?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We were chatting earlier, and I made a little note in the show notes just because to bring it up, because you have access to one, you have access to one, and I now have access to one. We just got a Peloton bike, and so I came home and Allison said, "Hey, thanks for buying me a Peloton." I'm like, "Oh, sure, you're welcome." I didn't even know anything about it, but this thing came. They show up and they set it up at your house and everything. It's amazing. Do you ride, right?
I ride, yes.
And
I'm exclusive to Cody.
Yeah. You have a favorite
Cody
rider.
Rigsby's. I'm exclusive to him. He's my favorite. Yeah.
I may have a new favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I've only done 2 rides, and one is with your favorite, Cody, and then one is with, and I can't recall her name, but it was a 20-minute metal ride, and it was all like Metallica and Danzig and Slayer, and
No Megadeth?
I think there was Megadeth. Yeah, but there had to have been. I was too enamored with the instructor, who is this blonde, head-banging, devil horn throwing fitness dynamo that had me pedaling my ass off for 20 minutes. It was pretty amazing. So I'm actually looking forward to doing another one today. As a fitness guy, I was like, I don't know if I'll get into Peloton or indoor cycling. I'd rather be outside, but this thing is pretty badass, I have to say. So.
Yeah, it's awesome. You get incredible business. I never really got it until till we got ours in, I think it was last April. Never understood it. I was like, I don't get it. Inside, who wants to do that? And the second I took my first class, I was like, okay,
yeah, this is real.
I got it.
Production quality is through the roof. The people that they choose for the instructors are they're like rock stars. Seriously, they must have vetted these people incredibly well, and the whole setup is pretty amazing.
I haven't done it yet, and everybody that I listen to talks about it.
Come over, we'll get drunk and ride the Peloton.
Yeah, I'm sure that's. But Jess was describing it to me, and I was like, "Oh, it's just like spin class or something." She's like, "No," and she explained it to me, and it sounded like, from what I heard, that they understand the business so well that they understand that the instructors are their core. Like, that is Peloton. It's not the bike; it's the instructors. From what I heard, is that accurate?
Yep, it's the experience.
Yeah. Similar to what we know in like the law enforcement community, you could it takes a persona to sell a class to its best capabilities. And what instructors like Tim Kennedy have done and Travis Haley have done is they are the face and voice and persona of that training entity or organization. How to manipulate a firearm and put a magazine and charge it and put a round on range or on target is not all that different from instructor to instructor to instructor. But it's that persona that delivers the information that really makes the difference. Similar to how Peloton is done, the way Cody or whatever this chick's name was that did the thing that I did. It's the persona that draws you in and inspires you to work harder or pay attention or whatever it is. So it's an interesting correlation between the two.
And I know you had a surgery recently, so did that drive you into it as far as like options? I know that you're recovering.
Yeah, I had knee surgery. Had a huge section of my meniscus taken out, which I think I tore in November, but I kind of just went with it. Running is not in the plans for me right now. It's painful and probably not a good idea, but cycling has been fine. Just the cyclical action of the pedaling hasn't caused any problems. So I didn't buy the Peloton for recovery for me. Allie bought it for her. But I hopped on and said, hey, this feels great. This is not a problem for my knee. And it's a heck of a lot of fun. So yeah.
Is she digging it?
Yeah, absolutely. She got her shoes. We set up the whole monitor for the kids have their own little accounts on there. My daughter Riley crushed a session on it the other day. It's pretty sweet. I'll be on it today. I'm sure I'll.
Yeah.
Do Cody's 80s ride.
Oh yeah, I saw that on there.
20-minute 80s ride.
I'm an 80s dude, so
sounds like a good time no matter what 80s ride. That sounds nice.
Yeah. Well,
I got a question for you. Interested about character. Like, you've met a lot of people and a lot of high pressure situations for them. And is there anybody in particular that sticks out to you, or any character trait specifically that sort of sticks out to you that you admire? Maybe not to eliminate anybody or throw anybody under the bus, but just character traits. I don't know, St. Pierre, for example. What's he like?
I think George is an awesome human being. He's been an amazing person since the day I met him back in maybe 2008. Stand-up guy. We don't actually work together professionally anymore since I left my old agency, but we remain very dear friends, and he remains very grateful to me for the work that I've done for him, and I remain very grateful to him for the opportunity to work with a guy like that. He is class at its finest form, and he's just he is loyal, but he's a phenomenal human being. I think the earlier question. I mean, we've seen, you have a chance to see the elite athletes across all sports, and the difference really has very little to do with the physical attributes, and it really has to do with the mental aspect and the mental strength and conditioning of that person. And maybe Buster Posey and I were talking a long time ago, where he was talking about sort of the season it just needs to be like this, right? The entire season. You can't be too high, it can't be too low. It's a long season, and I think you see that consistently with all the elite athletes, all the great athletes that have longevity in their career. It's never be too high, it's never be too low. It's right down the middle.
Yeah, it's an interesting, kind of Mike mentioned, there's this reciprocal appreciation that goes back and forth between athlete and agent. That's got it. I think that has to be there. They have to be appreciative of each other's efforts because their individual efforts combined make the business, both businesses, stronger and stronger.
How close is Jerry Maguire? I mean, like 1 out of 10. Like, how accurate is it?
I'll tell you, when we first started at CA Sports, the very first retreat we went to, we're all sitting in a room, and it's the theater at the old CA office, and our managing director at the time said, "Hey, I want to show you guys a video based on what we thought you guys were all about, right?" So he shows the video of Jerry Maguire when he's got the goldfish, and he's like, "I'm taking the goldfish. Who's coming with me?" And so we're kind of laughing. There's 30 of us in the room, 25 of us in the theater, and we're sitting there. And so he's all right. So I was laughing, and he said, "Any questions at all about the agency or the retreat or what's going on?" And we didn't really have many questions, and so there was a question in the back room. He's like, "Yeah, what's your question?" So everyone turns around, and it's Tom Cruise with a goldfish walking down, and he's like, "I've been telling these guys." Everyone's like, "Wait a minute, what just happened?" And we're like, "All right, that was pretty impressive."
Pretty awesome, yeah.
So we get to spend about an hour with him and drank some beers and hung out and talked some stories. But yeah, it's very similar.
Yeah. Is it? Okay.
Question came up in the last question that we went through about season length. You got Major League Baseball, which is 160 plus games, but then you got NFL, which is a fraction of that. Are the athletes in those two sports very different in terms of like how high strung they are? NFL athletes have a very short season. Their sport in and of itself is short and violent, right? It's 10 seconds of violence punctuated by a minute of re-huddle and then television breaks, whereas baseball players have this long 160 game season that runs a little slower. Are they different in their terms of their makeup?
I don't think so. I think they're very similar. I haven't really noticed a sort of glaring difference in their makeup. I mean, the reality is the football season is really, starts kind of in May, right? April-ish, right? Goes all the way through February.
Right.
So, just because they're not playing doesn't mean they're
not training and working hard.
Same with baseball. I mean, they basically take a month off and they're back training and they're getting going really full-time January, obviously. So similar.
So baseball's kicking off right now. How's MLB looking?
Looking good. I mean, we're back to a full season, so knock on wood, we'll get through it. And I think baseball is in a really good place. There's a lot of young, fun, interesting players to watch.
Yep.
They got to continue to evolve as a sport and continue to make it interesting to watch and exciting to watch. They're competing with everyone else.
Sure.
So that's going to be their biggest challenge.
Are there any multi-sport players anymore? Anybody that can pull it off?
I was watching Suggs the other day, and I was watching the highlights from his high school football career, and he's a freak. He's a stud of an athlete. So.
I think Bo Jackson was the quintessential. I don't know if there'll ever be somebody that was that gifted. He could run you over and run a touchdown on a Monday night, and then go 3 for 4 and throw you out from deep center field on Wednesday. Yeah. That guy was impressive.
We were talking years ago. We were in Telluride with Brody and an old colleague Tom and I. We were having the debate. It was a weekend-long debate about who were the 5 greatest all-around athletes of all time.
Yep.
Right? And we were throwing the obvious ones. And Michael Jordan, we're like, doesn't even make it. Michael Jordan does not make the top 5 greatest athletes of all time. But you start thinking about who actually made it. And Tom and Brody will probably be mad because I'm going to butcher who it was, but
Saying top 5 athletes of all time as far as like
greatest
well-rounded
all-around.
or
Yes.
just okay.
Greatest all-around
hands-on? Okay.
Multi-sports, kind of like not just one sport.
And it
but
was like
multi.
we had like made whatever the 5 like sort of pillars were. And it was like hand-eye, and it was like strength, and it was like speed, and it was like skill, or whatever the things were, right? And you think about Bo made it, I think barely.
Wow.
Jackie Robinson made it. Dave Winfield, who was I think 3 sports drafted in the first or second round and 3 professional sports.
No, I didn't know that. That's crazy. Wow.
And I'm trying to think of the other. I think Jim Thorpe was on the list. So Jackie Robinson, Jim Thorpe, Dave Winfield, Bo Jackson, who the fifth was. But you start thinking in terms like that, right? As great as these athletes are today, and all these guys you're thinking about, like they're still not.
Yeah, if you built an athlete avatar with like strength, speed, skill, hand-eye coordination, mobility, agility, recoverability, then I see where you're getting at it, because obviously Michael Jordan was the GOAT on the basketball court. He had a little stint in baseball, in minor league baseball, but those other guys were giants. But I didn't know that Dave Winfield was a 3-sport draftee.
Drafted in baseball in the first round, and I think in basketball in the first round, and I think football in the second or something. I'll have to look it up. I'm sure that someone will criticize him for having the stat wrong, but he was a beast. Wow.
Going back to the mental trait that you said is sort of the common thread through all of the different sports, more so than the physical. From that mental, what you learned from the play, what did you learn, if anything? Did any of the players' mentality and how they looked at life and how they treated their life change you in any way? And then also the other way, did you have an opportunity as how you treated life and how you looked at the world? Did it help? Did it change in a positive way any of the people that you've worked with?
Yeah, I've learned a lot from all the clients I've had a chance to work with. And I've learned so much from the people that I've gotten to work, a lot of the executives that I've gotten to be close to over the years. I find myself very, very fortunate in having those experiences and being able to interact at that level with those people. And I think one of the things is I've learned a lot from Cain Velasquez and from Tim and from Buster. We're around family, right? And I think we all sort of struggle with the same things. How do you be a better family person? How do you be a better dad, a better husband, and perspective? And I think those are things. And maybe Cain is the one guy that I think, I learned so much about him as the true ultimate sort of family man and father and husband, where he truly believes it, he lives by it, and he lives everything for his family, right? And it's just, that's, when you think back and you're saying, hey, do I need to be going on this business trip? Do I need to be going to this event? Sometimes you say, you know what? I don't, right? And to your point, early in my career, I don't remember going to the dentist or going to the doctor because I was afraid of missing out, or I feel like it was going to be looked down upon me if I missed work for a day, right? You have a little
That's
different
an interesting dichotomy of a professional athlete at the top of their sport. Cain Velasquez is arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and this guy's a fucking animal with like cardio of a little man, hands of a big man. So when you say he's also the ultimate family man, that's a really interesting thing. And same with Tim. Like if you follow Tim Kennedy on his Instagram page, it's a bunch of ass kicking in BJJ. It's a bunch of him in other countries with a rifle. But then there's a lot of video of him at home tending to chickens with his kids and teaching them life lessons about and that sort of thing. And I think that's an interesting thing.
I think a peaceful warrior is. I am attracted a lot to peaceful warriors, the people that have great power, great potential, and I guess what I heard you say, if I were to boil it down, was maybe balance. Turned up to 11, right? If you have a lot of amazing things going on in your life and you have opportunities, then balance, I think, is tricky. I think for anybody, period. And then if you start turning that volume up, then you have to get really critical of balance. Is that is that fair?
100%.
Yeah, that's cool.
If you don't have that balance, if you don't have family and your friends a part of everything else you're doing business wise, then what's it for? What's the point? You don't have the same satisfaction,
Yeah. So on that note, Mike, thank you so much for being in here, for spending the morning with us. You have your family waiting for you back at home, in the vacation home, as it were. So we really thank you for your time and coming in here and sharing it with us today. Hopefully your shoulder's okay from the 50. We're sending you home with some 50 caliber casings, which will go great on any desk. And with that, we're going to we'll go ahead and conclude. And Mike, you got anything else over there, brother?
No, man. It's just really nice to meet you, and I don't know. I guess enjoy your visit here, and hope you have a good time. What do you guys got? Anything cool planned?
We're going to be hopefully the pool for most of the week. Probably jump on a boat one day and check out some gators another day. But thank you.
There's
guys
no
both
shortage
for-
of gators.
No
That's
shortage
for sure.
of all three of those. Yeah.
We want to see you guys, hopefully, if you can. Allie's in real estate school, so she's
Cool.
been busy at night, but hopefully we
do
can,
it.
we can catch up with
Awesome.
you guys.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really
All right,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Had a great time.
All right, everybody.
Thanks.